So we know that from secondary school, we learn that heat can be transferred from a region of higher temperature to another region of lower temperature through three main mechanisms. So we learned from secondary school there's conduction, there's convection, and there's radiation. So these are three different mechanisms for us to transfer heat from one region which is hotter to another region this is colder. So conduction happens through vibration of the particles in the solid. So conduction usually happens for solid. So solid, your particles, your solid particles are arranged in orderly fashion, right? So the vibration of the particles near the hotter region will affect its neighboring particles to vibrate faster as well. Then these neighboring particles will affect the next neighboring particles to vibrate faster as well. So they gradually affects the neighboring particles to vibrate faster, and in that way they transfer the heat from the hotter region to the colder region. This is how conduction works. For convection, it's not that the vibration of one particles affects the neighboring particles to vibrate faster. It's not that way. So what happens in convection is the particles that vibrate faster will displace, okay, or they will move from one region which is hotter. They vibrate faster because they are nearer to the hotter region, so they receive the energy, they vibrate faster, and they displace or they move to the colder region. So these particles that are moving faster, they are able to move to the colder region, and in that case they bring the energy from the hotter region to the colder region. Okay, so the colder particles the particles that are not so excited or vibrate weaker, what they do is they'll be displaced to the hotter region and they receive energy from the hotter region, and in turns they vibrate faster. So it's the movement of the particles throughout the system that conducts heat and that transfer heat through convection. Okay, conduction, the particles doesn't move from the hotter end to the colder end, but for convection, the particles in the system actually vibrates and it actually moves in the system from the hotter region to the colder region. Okay, so convection usually happens for liquids or gas, or we call it as fluids. Convection usually happens for fluids because only for fluids the particles are able to move from one region to another region. Whereas for solid, for conduction, your particles, right, cannot move from one region to another region. So solid is for conduction, liquids and gas are for convection. Okay, the last mechanism is radiation. Radiation is basically just the electromagnetic spectrum that we have learned about as well. So you have your radio wave, microwave, infrared, ultraviolet, visible light, X-ray, gamma ray, all those kind of ray. They are electromagnetic waves. So electromagnetic wave carries energy and they can travel in vacuum. So what happens is you have a hotter region. Your hotter region emits electromagnetic wave. It can be infrared, it can be ultraviolet. Depends on how hot is it. Okay, hotter object, they emit shorter wavelengths electromagnetic wave. Okay, this one is not within our syllabus, it's not our concern, but what we need to know is that hotter regions, they emit electromagnetic wave. So electromagnetic wave here can travel in vacuum, so they travel, then they reach the colder region, then the colder region absorbs this electromagnetic wave, then in turn it receives the energy from the electromagnetic wave and gain internal energy. Okay, so these are different mechanisms of heat transfer, but for the sake of this section over here, we are going to focus on heat conduction only. So we are going to study how heat is transferred from hotter region to colder region using solid. We are not going to discuss liquid or discuss gas, and we are not going to discuss EM radiation at all. Okay, so we'll move on to talk about heat conduction in greater detail in the next video.